okay, wow, there's a lot of innovation, there's a lot of amazing architecture, there's a lot of amazing tech, there's a lot of amazing fashion. I wanted to share those stories with other people. I felt that the single story of poverty and disease and corruption was very limiting. But millions of white South Africans, of Arabic, North Africans also. So that was how it was born.
Hey y'all, how you doing? My name is Lydia Blanco. So I am a storyteller as well. My definition is digital community specialist at Black Enterprise Magazine. But my journey began in my neighborhood as a young Black girl who grew up in a poverty-stricken and gun-riddled community. I was actually often one of the first people to be a first responder before camera crews and emergency responders came and people were shot and killed in my community. So I was always driven to tell those stories. So now I'm on the lighter side of things, talking about entrepreneurship, business, and Black wealth. But my passion's always been to help propel and accelerate Black people, but also help us find our voice and tell stories authentically.
Thank you very much. My name is Teke, and well, how did I get here? You know, I've been very inquisitive from a very tender age. As an African, I've always asked several questions. Why is it that history told us that we do have that civilization, if you like, started in Africa, but at some time there was the Great Wall of Benin, the old Benin Empire, or kingdom, if you like. Yet all these stories are not all bad. In fact, Benin, the Wall of Benin, pre-existed the Great Wall of China, and Africans don't even know. So what brought me here is the passion to tell African stories, the African way, from a perspective of someone who has felt what Africans do feel on the continent or wherever they are. Well, I'm saying Africans. As far as you're Black, wherever you are, no matter your nationality, you're an African. So it cuts across everywhere. You're an African. So it cuts across everywhere. So that's what brought me here, my passion to tell the true stories. You know, we're tired of the mindset that Africans are people who were orchestrated to administrate and not produce. Now we have Black people that build the pyramids in Egypt. Who are they? Or who were they? They're Africans, they're Black. That's my passion, and that's why I'm here.
And I love that you said that, because I think that us sitting here, we have a specific, very special privilege in the stories that we tell, in the ways that we uplift our voices. And so, Collins, I want to speak with you now. The theme of this year's social media week is related to the responsibility that we have to tell these stories. So, in going down the line, what is your responsibility?
The first thing I thought of is that, Collins, if you have to, you know, tell the story or be heard, you should have a voice. And having a voice would mean, you know, I should become an influencer. So I picked the line of broadcasting, and that's why I'm a broadcaster today with Nigeria Info. First of all, I think it's my responsibility is not only to tell young Africans whenever I have the opportunity, because I speak to millions of people on a daily basis on radio, but bring to them the opportunities available on the African continent in forms of challenges that we face on a daily basis. Sometimes late at night, I'm at Ekota roundabout, somewhere around here in Victoria Island, Lagos. 2 a.m. or say early in the morning, I'm sitting with guys who probably, you know, having conversations about this country. I hear dreams, I hear them speak of great things their dreams, how they feel about the African continent, how that they know that it is the most endowed continent in the world, that it has almost a large percentage of what the world has as resources, natural or human resources as it were, but yet it's a third world continent and we're suffering. So it is my responsibility to let young Africans know that yes, the challenges might be there, but you can rise from wherever you are, whether it's from Ajigule or from wherever it is you are, or somewhere in Malawi or the Congo or wherever, you can rise from wherever you are to become an influencer and rewrite your story and change the narrative. So I bring information to Africans, opportunities through research and going back into history. So I feel that it's my responsibility not only to paint this picture, but also bring history to reality. Because one thing as Africans that I've noticed, we do not pay attention to history. We have been used to a kick and follow kind of life where we wait for someone somewhere. Oh, you hear statements like, they have not. Who are the they? They have not done it. Ah, they have not done it and all that. Who are these they? So I'm bringing the stories to them to let them know that the they they're talking about is you and I. And that one man has to be you.
Excuse me, y'all. Thank you, Lydia.
When I think about my responsibility as a reporter, I lean more towards my faith. And there is a scripture in the Bible, the Message version, that says, irresponsible talk makes a real mess of things, but a reliable reporter is a healing presence. And when I think about Black people and our connectedness, I think that we have this responsibility to be connected, but also to be reliable. Also, a part of that would be to educate, empower, and uplift. When I think about the Black press in its natural form in the United States, I think about Ida B. Wells, Frederick Douglass, and all these other people, and all these great storytellers. And then I think about, Africa and the griots who were in the villages. So I want to do all of those things. I want to embody all of those things, and that's where a lot of my responsibility is rooted in.
I think that my singular responsibility through Wish Africa is to make sure that the content that we're putting out there is not harmful towards Africans, because anybody can take the same fact and three different people can tell the story in different ways. My objective, our objective, is to promote a more positive image, to say not everything is bad. There are a lot of people that work very hard and strive for excellence, brands and products and services.
I'm struggling with this microphone. I think for me, my sole responsibility is to keep the connection between Africa and the diaspora. So it's to shed the light and also connect the similarities. Like for myself, it's important for me to tell our stories to the rest of the world. And in doing so, I realized, especially as women, there are a lot of challenges that we face here that you would face in Kenya, that you would face in Jamaica, that you would face in the United States, that you would face in Canada, in the UK. So I think for me, my responsibility is to make sure that I continue to share our stories, shed the light, and also make sure that, look, we're really not as different as we think we are.
And Ony, you're an international reporter, so you've kind of seen in close proximity some of those differences in the way that the U.S. Black media operates versus, Nigerian media, and some of those pros and cons. Can you speak to what you've noticed?
Interesting. Yeah. The similarity that I noticed is the fact that in the audience, but from my experience, I feel like sometimes there's that struggle to show both sides of the story. So it's not always so clear, like, and I'm so sorry, Collins. I know you kept saying African story, but I think the African story is dimensional. It's not a single story, of course, as Shiromanda would always say. But I think for me, having worked in the States and here, my challenge has been, how do I tell this story without being, oh, this is a poor woman in the hood, and she's a drug addict survivor, and you know, she comes from a lineage of abuse, to, no, this is a black woman from a very rich family. Her mom and her dad, they're still married, they're professionals. She does happen to have a drug addiction. She's also an Ivy League senior. Just kind of like, again, connecting the dots. These are two black women. One could be from the projects, one could be from a very affluent family, but the struggles are still there. So it's like being able to choose stories from different backgrounds and make sure that I have the autonomy to do that. That's been the same challenge here, working in Nigeria, being able to tell stories that have different sides. So it's not always that one singular narrative. Are you guys following me? Everybody looks so tired. Are you guys following me?
Well, we do.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Lydia, I want to ask you a similar question. Being a person who works in the black press in the U.S., because the black press has such a deep and really legacy that is seeped and married with advocacy. So, same question to you. What are some of those pros and cons that you see, the challenges and upsides of that working in media, like media?
You know, I am an activist.
Working in media, like media.
You know, I am an activist and a journalist. Every gift there is, the good ones though. And I really value the black press. It's always been a goal of mine to work for a black-owned media publication and tell those stories that matter, because the con is, as some of the original storytellers on this earth, we are the last to be, you know, we're the last to be interviewed. We're the last to be interviewed. We are targeted to look a certain way when we open our doors, when we're grieving for this calamity in our neighborhoods. So for me, it's really important to show up and be a presence in these spaces and let people know that we tell stories too that are accurate. We tell stories too that are timely, that are relevant, and be the advocate so that people can tell their real stories in real time, so that other large companies can't just profit off of the culture. There is so much that gets lost, and I've worked at a major news company in New York City at 30 Rock, and have had that experience, and it shaped me, but it made me understand the importance more of having people who look like me to tell stories about me. Because there are just some things that other people cannot get right or cannot pay enough attention to get right.
Yeah, it's vital. And as someone who is also in the U.S. black press, I see so often our stories get told by people who don't look like us, people who don't necessarily understand and don't empathize with our experience. And the story ends up watered down, it ends up whitewashed, you know. Lola, I want to talk to you because there is still a very much white face to more so lifestyle content and travel, style, art. When we think of these things, of course, like, we have a very different understanding and a very different view and entry point to them than a lot of like non-black, non-African people have. But unfortunately, those viewpoints get pushed to the back or erased completely. So how is Wish Africa changing that narrative and pushing it forward?
Okay, so I think I'll speak to your last question, which was about the difference between how African American media versus African media portrays stories.
Yeah,
and I think it's a fundamental difference in that The African American experience is about, I have to be careful here, obviously. Growing up, I'm going to say the reverse, growing up as an African person in Africa, you grow up and the industry titans look like you. The bank owners look like you. The people on the street look like you. So it's not, you are represented from the lowest to the highest. So it's not an issue of race. And when stories are told, they're not told as if they're spectacular or out of the ordinary. It just happens to be told as a matter of fact. So going back to your second question, it's more a case of what you subscribe to. If you live here, the content that you're getting is very different from the content that you're getting in a white majority country. And as I said, Africa is not just about blackness for me, it's more about blackness for Wish Africa. It's about this continent and the difficulty, the historical difficulties, and how challenging it is to produce good quality things, and just trying to emphasize that those things are, that people are doing those things here. I hope I answered the question.
Yeah, definitely so. Collins, you recently shifted your focus to your own brand and to have your own ownership. What is the importance of that, of having something to call your own, to have the agency over, to do with what you like, and creating change in the larger digital space?
Yes, Black Voice Media was born out of the need to create a platform for young Africans to, learn how they can tell their stories. How do I mean? We use voiceovers to train them and other media trainings, but the whole idea is for you to know how to create content. All right, content creation, because it's commonplace in here that content is king. Well, it's much more than that. On social media, we have a list of people who are very, in quotes, popular, maybe influencers if you like, but what are they popular in? So we're trying to correct, first of all, teach Africans how to create the right content that will tell the story of Africans in a very beautiful way. And not just a beautiful way, tell it the way it is, but also not affecting the sensibilities of Africans all around the world and the rest of the world. So it's not all about having influence, it's all about telling story, it's about how you tell it. And it's not about race, it's not about color, it's just about correcting the misconceptions about the black race, if you like, or blacks all around the world. What comes to your mind as an average person who's not African when you hear about an African or you hear about black? What's the first thing that comes to your mind? There is already a mindset which has to be corrected. We have great Africans, we have great Nigerians and Africans indeed that at the forefront to see to it that we contribute something meaningful not only on our continent, not only in our countries, our respective countries, but also to contribute something meaningful to the world. And that is what we aim to achieve, and that's what we're doing. We train hundreds of, young Africans yearly, and we do it for free, just so they can learn not only how they can tell the stories, but also make something from it, and also optimize the social media space. You create content, where do you put it? Everyone they say is a content creator. So we just want to guide Africans to create the right content, to tell the right stories, the right way.
Lola, same question for you. So essentially, because you are a founder, because you have this platform and the agency to create change, how are you using that, and what is the importance of that in sculpting the larger digital narrative?
Wow, I'm worried I'm going to sound like a broken record. Okay, I'll give an example as to one of the inspirations from Wish Africa. were a part of an event in the UK called Pop-Up Africa, and we had created a lounge in the general space, and it allowed me to speak to many of the different diasporan Africans, and I realized that the same news, international news, that a regular Caucasian English person was listening to or watching on TV was the same stuff that they were consuming, which meant that there was no emphasis on beyond tokenist accomplishments. You couldn't know that there are associations and organizations of people who actively are trying to make their own country or their own communities better. So that was, I hope I've answered the question, that was what Wish Africa is trying to do through digital media, and to reach a young audience of people.
Yeah, definitely. Lydia, we talk a lot about the role, the storied role of legacy Black publications in the U.S. Can you talk to the importance of preserving and ensuring that these legacy publications are still around and still thriving to tell our stories in the U.S.?
Okay. So I work for Black Enterprise magazine. It was founded some time ago by Earl Grey Sr., who was this Renaissance man. He was well known in the United States. He worked on campaigns. He was on the front lines. And one day he was like, you know what, Black people in America need to build wealth, so I'm going to start this newsletter. And it turned into Black Enterprise magazine. Being there is such an honor, because that's the magazine that I saw my grandparents, coffee table, and I was like, oh, look at Oprah, oh, look at this person, and now I'm writing those stories, right? And having that experience is one of the reasons why it's so important that these Black publications are preserved, but also because we need to control the narrative. There is no reason why we should not have our own. When we rely on other sources, we see what happens. So why would you count on someone else to tell your story? Why should someone else show up and be available? We need to do that for ourselves. Relying on other people doesn't get us very far. And so as a member of the Black press, while I'll look at the CNNs and BBCs and the ABCs of the world, there are other networks and publications that I look to, but the caveat with that is that a lot of those publications aren't Black owned either. So we have to be honest about that, we have to be real about that, and we have to have this sense of agency to tell our own stories and own the narrative.
Definitely. Lola, I think you were the one who brought up this issue of tokenization. And this question is for the entire panel, because we definitely see ourselves tokenized not only as consumers, but as media players, people who have seats at the table. And sometimes there's only one seat available for people who look like us. And there's no doubt that there is importance and value in our voice, but people don't always see that unless it is a Black publication. So starting with you, Ony, what is the importance of making sure that not only are we are including diverse experiences in digital media, but making sure that it is inclusive?
I think it's so important. I mean, and when I say inclusiveness, I'm talking about ethnic background, differences in nationality, differences in gender, of course, sexual preference and orientation. It's very important because I know that you guys have been at a brainstorming table, and when you're trying to tackle a story, people have different angles, and it's all based on your experience. Storytelling is telling an experience. So I feel like if we have that diversity, we can definitely make sure that we have stories that represent a wider range of the population.
Definitely. Lola, same question?
So again, to differentiate, I can understand that the tokenism is more apparent in white majority countries. I guess less so here. What I have found though is that when we have approached international organizations for partnership, there is a preference for token stories. So I'll give you examples. So David Ajay is one of the most famous African architects right now, and there's a preference for telling a single story about him, but not telling a story about the myriad of architects that are just like him. So it's a slightly different slant on what you said.